If there is an art to argument, I think it starts with asking ourselves the question, why is this important to me? Why do I want to engage in that discussion in the first place? Are my goals noble? Do I hope to win over a friend over time? Again, I guess that's almost a prerequisite because rarely are arguments going to be settled in the first engagement, especially if it's over issues that are particularly sensitive, such as politics or religion. So we got to ask ourselves, why are we bothering in the first place? Is this really worth engaging in? Why? Another reason is, do I have to be right? Do I feel that the only way I can get through this discussion with somebody is by rubbing their nose in my superiority on that issue, my domination of what I insist is the only correct angle or view on it? That's a hard question to ask ourselves because it's so easy to deny it and come up with another reason for perpetuating that argument. So we have to be, again, as in so many of these discussions, open to self-criticism and self-debate. What's in this that makes it so important for me to pursue? Arguments, unlike legal use of that term, are generally emotion-driven. We're going to try to boost our case with facts, but sometimes those facts are unsure, so they're really just opinions or a selective use of facts and ignoring contradictory evidence that might also lead to a different conclusion, and that might really be the basis for our opponent's argument. They begin to accuse us, or at least consider it if they don't say it, that we aren't looking at the whole picture, only that part of it that we favor, and then cherry-picking evidence that supports our point of view. Well, that's one of the reasons why we have debates in the first place, because we do have different perspectives. If we are not open to changing our position, I suppose it's pretty hard to expect someone else to be open to changing theirs. Which isn't to say that this isn't necessary sometimes. That's actually a pretty bold statement, what I said, because that also is a matter of opinion. And again, goes to motive. If we care about someone enough to persist over time in a line of inquiry or discussion in the hopes of eventually convincing them to consider at least part of what's driving our position, I suppose that's a successful outcome, and we would feel good because if they're friends that we're arguing with, that is for their own good that they finally come around to our way of thinking. Now, that can also be perceived as a rather arrogant position, that our way of thinking is automatically the correct or only way for a decent person to think that way. And rarely is that going to be the case either. And their view of us is subject to the same criteria. What's it with Dan that he simply cannot budge on an issue? What's making him so stubborn? What is making him incapable of ceding even an inch of territory on a topic? It might be that my ego is in the way, just as I've accused you, the opponent in this argument, of having your ego in the way. It may be that I'm so emotionally invested in a point of view that I simply can't give it up on that point either. That's why arguing about religion and even politics is a risky enterprise, because emotion is particularly likely to be a very relevant theme or driver that should be, in another person's positioning. Whether they say it or not, it really becomes pretty obvious if you're able to pick up on it as you should be. So what's driving the argument? What's my motive for engaging in it? I hope that motive is a noble one, that it's done out of respect and admiration for the person who we're talking with. Why admiration? Because, if we have a noble motive, we want the benefit of our position to benefit them as well. And we want to be respectful enough to listen to their point of view with the possibility, and maybe it's a very good possibility, that they're going to push our growing edge a little bit too, or a lot. That we're going to begin to see things more broadly and from a perspective that we have either been afraid of or we simply have tuned out because we have been so emotionally channeled or ego driven that we've been closed minded to our detriment. So, yeah, good can come out of argument. But let's think through what we want to accomplish and why we believe it's worth pursuing. And if it is, let's do so with respect, which means patient, selecting the time for engaging someone carefully so as not to embarrass them or certainly not to badger them. At a certain point, you just have to let it go. Thanks.